AI isn't going away, and our students are already using it. In this episode, we talk about how math educators can engage with AI, what it's genuinely useful for, where it falls short, and how modeling good AI habits might be the most important thing we can do for our students this year. The first thing I want to talk about on our podcast episode today is why educators need to be engaging with AI. So, we all know that our students are using AI. They're going to continue using AI whether we tell them to or not. And so, what do we have control over? We have control over how they use it. In some sense, well, we don't have control about that. We have control over how we can teach them. We have control about how to help them use it in intelligent ways that's actually going to benefit their learning. If I know they're going to be using a tool, regardless of whether I want them to or not, what I can do is help them use it the best way it can be used. Now, whether you love AI and think it's fantastic, whether you hate AI and think it's the worst thing in the world, the students are going to be using it. Let's do everything that we can so that the students who are using it as good as they can. And in order for us to help our students with this, we need to be using it ourselves. We need to know how to use AI if we're going to teach students how to use AI. And this is something completely new. This is something that, we haven't been trained to deal with, but it's in our world now. It has rapidly changed education, rapidly changed how math classes work. And we have to be learning this so we can help our students as they are doing and going through it themselves. And so what I'm going to challenge you, we'll start this episode with a challenge. What I'm going to challenge you to do is to play with AI. If you're not already playing with it, play with it a little bit as a professor. And play with it a little bit as a student too. Pretend to be a student sometimes, and think about ways that your students might be using it, and look at how different AI are responding to these requests. I've really learned a lot from this. Every week I try to kind of demonstrate a possible use of AI and have a short discussion with my students about whether it's effective or not effective. And there's been so many times where I'm like, oh, this is such a great way for my students to use AI. Let's demonstrate it. So I do a little test run, and it just is terrible. And it's like, okay, well, this is good to know, right? I might think AI is good for something, and I feel like I have quite a bit of experience compared to the average person. I think AI will be good for something. I do a test and it sucks. And that's going to happen sometimes. So we need to be playing with it so we can learn from these things, so we can get a better feel for how it's effective for students and how it's not. And part of how we can do that is also using it as professors. And that's what this first episode is about. We have another 2-part episode. This first episode is going to be how can we use AI as professors, and the second part, the next episode, will be how we can get students to use it more effectively. And again, why do we have this first one? Because we can't teach students how to use it effectively if we don't know how to use it ourselves. So we'll talk about why and how we are going to be using it. So the last part of this little introduction is I want to say that one of the best ways that we can teach students good ways of engaging with AI is for us to model all the good behaviors that we want students to see. And a huge part of that is transparency. We need to be telling our students how we're using AI. We need to be showing our students how we're using AI. And we need to be very clear with students on what we're using AI for and what we're not using AI for. So whether you have a blurb in your syllabus, whether you have like a footer on an assignment or something, or whether you just talk about it in class, it's up to you. But make sure that you're disclosing to students how you're using AI, because in my experience, students are much more understanding of professors using AI if they know that the professor is using AI. It's really when the professor doesn't say anything about AI that students start to feel tricked. We've heard about these various news articles and lawsuits and stuff like that. There's students trying to get their tuition back because they found out their professor was like creating assignments or grading, or I don't remember the specifics, but using AI essentially without telling them. And I think again, we shouldn't be surprised that students feel this way. I think a lot of us would feel this way too, right? If you found out that, your boss, your supervisor or whatever didn't actually do any part of your annual review and just had AI write the whole review, we'd feel a little unseen. We'd feel a little bit unimportant. We'd feel like they were just being lazy, right? Now, if at the start of the year that's communicated as like, oh yeah, I'm going to use AI to do this draft and I'll look it over and I'll edit it and blah, 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 whatever, that may or may not still be good, but it's going to feel a lot better. And that's going to work for our students too. So I think we should be using AI to learn how to use it, to get more experience with it. But we do need to be very transparent with our students about how we're using, and again, how it's working well and not working well. I think that kind of, I don't want to say the word transparency again, but the humanity, right? Of like, we are real people, and yeah, some things are working well, some things are not working well. That's always a good thing to incorporate into our educational practices whenever we can. And then, to tie into this, appropriate uses of AI is going to be important. But I think we mostly covered that already. So the next chunk of this episode, we're going to talk about what AI is actually good for as a math instructor and what AI is not so good for. So the first thing I want to talk about for what AI is good for is a lot of times, and not always, and let me just say, a disclaimer for this entire episode is a lot of times, but not always, because everything is changing. AI is changing month to month. New models are coming out faster and faster. Things are changing. It's never consistent. You're never going to get an AI answer. They change every time. So big disclaimer for all of this. But a lot of times, AI can be really good at generating problems. So, and I'm not just talking about problems like, oh, give me 10 factoring problems. I want a bunch of polynomials to factor, although maybe that is a good way of getting some problems. Or again, there's plenty of resources online that can give you these same problems. But I think AI can be useful for generating more interesting, specific problems. Be very specific, and later on in this episode, we'll talk about prompt engineering, but be very specific about what kind of problems that you want. So for example, I use a lot of Claude for generating a lot of my problems, and I tell it what kind of problems I like. I say sometimes, I like a mixture of skills practices, but also some more conceptual things with applications and contextualizations, explorations. I tell it to think about Bloom's taxonomy. I want students to be creating and analyzing different things. I want it to tie into AI and information literacy for critiquing solutions and stuff like that. I like tie-ins to past and future material, scaffolding to review prerequisites, why certain things matter, explicitly write out that I want them to not be using notes or not be using a calculator for a couple problems to make sure that they can practice. I want students to be doing self-validation. And if this sounds like I'm talking way too fast, and any of this is interesting to you, you should check out the first 2 episodes of this podcast where I talk about homework, because it's something I think a lot about and care a lot about. But what is the point? The point is you can use AI to generate problems. Think about what kind of problems you like. Think about what you want from your problems. Think about what you want your students to be doing and specify. And then something I found a lot is the best problems that I put into my homework assignments are not AI generated, but many times if I get AI to create some problems for me, it gives me ideas. I go, oh yeah, I don't really like that, but yeah, I can do a problem like this, and like it really gets us thinking, which ties us directly into the next thing that AI is fantastic for: brainstorming. Okay. One of the weaknesses of AI is that it hallucinates, or sometimes it's just wrong, or sometimes it doesn't do a very good job. But one of the best things AI is good at is writing things. I don't care how bad it is, AI will always give you something. It is dependable. It will always get some ideas onto the page, which a lot of times for a lot of us is half the battle, right? Think of how many times we get stuck, like, writer's block, or we have a blank page. We don't know how to start. AI is very good at starting and sometimes not so good at stopping. So let's use it. So maybe if you're, again, like I just mentioned, brainstorming homework problems or quiz problems can be a great way to get your gears turning for what you want to create. If you're not sure, like if you're just feeling stuck to start like writing an exam, or if you're looking for ways of switching up your in-class activities, or, thinking about how you could, rewrite your course policies, or you want to include some alternative assessments, who knows? But if you just want to start somewhere, asking AI can be a great way to get started. And maybe you don't use any of its results, but it gives you something to get started, which is really helpful. And again, if for those of you who are more social than I am, you could also ask coworkers and colleagues. A lot of times they would love to, give you what they have, their resources and materials, and help you get started that way too. That's also very, very fantastic. But it does involve talking to people, which sometimes is hard for some of us, hypothetically. Another thing that I think AI is very good at in some ways is giving feedback on assignments. I do like using AI to check my solutions for errors. It's not always correct. I think Microsoft Copilot especially has been very bad recently. Is like, oh yeah, you made a mistake here, here, and here. What you should have done is this, this, and this. Oh wait, I got the same answer that you did. It's kind of getting ridiculous. I think it's getting worse over time. But in general, using AI to check your work can be a time saver if you don't have time to check all your work your own. Again, like we should still be doing some level of self-validation to model to our students that they should also be checking their answers. But that is one way of using it. And I think that's maybe the weakest way to use AI for feedback. I think it's very, very helpful on like language. So if you're thinking about your syllabus language, for example, you just put in your syllabus in AI and be like, does anything jump out to you, or like any suggestions? Things that could be tweaked depending on how students might read it. And you can get a lot of great ideas that way. Or like an email that you're writing as a student. You're like, I'm really upset with this student. They've made appointments 3 times and haven't showed up. And I'm still meeting with them. Or, maybe you're upset because they're complaining about something else. Who knows, right? But if we're upset, we can draft an email and we can get feedback that way. Again, all of these things you can get with coworkers as well, and stuff like that. But sometimes it's easier not to talk to people. But maybe we should be making bigger efforts to talk to people. One of the uses for feedback I've really enjoyed is asking it how students might feel or experience a new assignment, especially if it's something I haven't really done before. It's like, okay, what might be a stumbling block here that I'm not seeing? Or, what might be confusing that I think is perfectly clear? I think it does a really good job with that. Like, where could confusion arise on this assignment? And that, again, ties me into the next thing, that AI can be very helpful in getting us started in areas that we're unfamiliar. So a very strong personal anecdote is last quarter, I created my first large business pre-calculus project. And I had done some like project-like things before, but this one I wanted to do a lot of student choice. I wanted it very scaffolded. I wanted it to take about have like 6 parts that students are completing every week. It was a huge project, and I am not super experienced in project-based learning. It's something I'm trying to work on and grow, and it seemed very, very intimidating. I'm not a business person. I have interest in business. I love using finance. I love math applications. So I'm close to that niche, but I'm not a business person. And so being able to use AI to help me get my foot in the door, it made it just feel so much more doable. It's like I had a kind of smart, kind of dumb, not so smart buddy that I could just ask for a lot of help and a lot of feedback on. And that was very helpful for getting me started on something that would have been overwhelming without that assistance. And then the last thing I want to talk about what AI is good for is AI is really good at helping you use AI, which sounds a little ridiculous, right? But using AI to help you use AI is effective. I like to think, like I've read a lot of things about people who are using like Claude Code or OpenAI's Codex and stuff like that, and saying that, oh yeah, Claude Code created a lot of pretty bad stuff until I asked Claude Code how to write better, or until I asked Claude how to write better Claude Code prompts. And a lot of other things too is like you really can ask it like, hey, this is what I want to do. Like, what are some good questions to ask you so I can do it? It feels a little silly to ask that of AI, but AI is pretty good at getting you the right things you need to do so that you can ask it what you need. So those are some of the main things that AI is really useful for. I like it for generating problems, brainstorming, getting feedback on my work, and then getting started with in unfamiliar areas. Some things that AI is not good for that we should really talk about is please, please, please do not put private student information into AI. Okay, that's a breach of FERPA. It's not secure, or it's not private at all. You should not be putting private information. You should not be putting your own private information into AI either, probably. But anyway, legally, any sensitive data do not put into AI. And then something, again, your mileage may vary, but I also don't believe that you should be using AI for direct student communication. I think it's really good for getting feedback on your own writing. If you wanted to tweak things, I think it's good for getting you started. But if you just copy and paste something from AI into a message to a student, they are going to notice that and they are not going to be happy. Just like when a student does that to me, I notice it and I'm usually not happy unless they have a good reason for it. And if some people do use it to help with language barriers and stuff like that. But again, I think, we are all as professors capable of writing our own messages. I think it can save time. I think if you're going to use it, please edit it, put it in your voice, look it over. I cannot stress enough how you are responsible for anything you create or send or communicate, regardless of whether it was written by AI or not. It is your responsibility. I would caution you against using it for direct student communication. And then again, that ties into the transparency too, right? When students sign up for a class, their expectations are that a professor is going to read their work, that their professor is going to be writing to them. They don't want, by and large, students generally don't want to be interacting with AI because a lot of people don't like AI. For a lot of good reasons. And so I'm saying we should be using it to help our students, but there's many ways that we should not be using it and ways that don't help our students. And that leads into the next thing is that, again, using AI for grading is very, very tempting. Grading is the single least favorite part of my job, even more than committee work. So I'm not going to talk about committee work right now, but because it is important. So is grading. Grading is important too, and I also hate it. AI does have a lot of bias. There's a lot of research on that. Again, it just messes up with a lot of student expectations. They want to know that there's a human looking at their work. You need to be transparent about this. But here's maybe one of the biggest reasons you should not be using AI for grading is it delegates and it surrenders a huge piece of connection and understanding with your students. When I am grading my students' work, I see how their brains are thinking. I see the mistakes that are getting made. I understand mathematically where the class is at. All of this is incredibly valuable, and I don't care if you have AI summarize these things for you. It is no substitution for being there with the student, looking at their work, and using that to help them grow. I think if we ever, and again, watch out for student privacy. If you are using AI for grading, you need to not include any names or identifying information. But again, I would say just don't do it and grade yourself. And it sucks, but it helps us help our students, which is, I think, what most of us are here for. Something else that AI is not very good at is, again, I think I mentioned it earlier, but very often AI will say something is mathematically correct that's incorrect, or it'll look at my solutions, it'll say something's wrong that's actually right. It makes mistakes a lot of the time, and we have to be very, very careful about that. So make sure to look things over. And tying into something else related is a lot of times it's good at generating problems, but do not rely on it to create good practice quizzes or good notes or good assignments. Even if you're specific, I've found a few times it's like, oh, here's the textbook I'm using. Here's the sections we're covering. Like, give me some problems or something like that. And it just does something totally unrelated to the book at all. Even if I ask it, I was like, oh, do you have access to this book? Do you know what book I'm talking about? It's like, oh yeah, it's this book, the blah, blah, blah. It's this chapter, blah, blah, blah. It's this section. Yep, I got it. And then it just does something nuts. So be specific, and then just watch out that sometimes it's going to suck. Okay, so those are the main things that AI is good for and not good for. And the last part of this episode is just going to be talking about ways that we can use AI effectively. And a lot of this is somewhat general and you can use other resources for. I'm going to try to highlight the things that are mostly relevant from a college math class context. And we'll quickly go through a lot of things, but we'll mostly dwell on the things that are specific to math. So as you may have heard before, you need to be specific when you are using AI. You need to tell it exactly what you want. You need to tell it your values. You need to tell it guidelines. Otherwise, it's going to give you very mediocre slop. And then similarly, don't just copy and paste what it gives you into your assignment or into your email or into whatever, right? It's a starting point. It's an idea. It is no substitution for your own work. And then another important part of using AI effectively is to iterate on your prompts. Like if you are using it to generate some problems, you try to be as specific as you can, but then you see what it gives you and you say, oh, no, I actually wanted this. Or you start to understand how it's responding to your prompts, and you can kind of preempt this in future ways. But make sure to self-reflect on every single output, and you don't just have to take the first output. I think the other day I was brainstorming some problems for a lecture video I was doing, and the first few problems I saw it gave me weren't what I was looking for. I forget the specifics, but then it was like, oh, okay, no, here, all right, yes, you gave me some problems, but I really want these problems to have a certain kind of examples and a certain kind of flow. Make sure to include this, and that can be very, very helpful. Make sure to iterate your prompts. Again, there's a ton of prompt engineering tools and resources online, and you can also use AI to help you with this as well. But again, there's plenty of good things created by humans too. Something I find a lot of people maybe not knowing too much about is customizing bots. So for example, in Claude, you can go to settings and you can give instructions for Claude. Every AI tool has this. ChatGPT has this, Google Gemini has this, Microsoft Copilot has this. Any chatbot has some level of customization that you can tell it. So for example, if you're curious about what kind of customization would you choose, what some of the examples that I have for my own chatbots are, I say, don't end every single message with a prompt for follow-up, right? Because that's what AI does. It will always prompt you. It's like, oh, if you'd like, I can, write a treatise on this, blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, if you'd like, I can help you, juggle this balloon. I don't know. This is nonsense. But sometimes its prompts are nonsense too. So I tell it not to do that. I also tell it that it doesn't have to be so sycophantic. AI famously thinks you are the coolest and best person ever and that you are wonderful. And I already know I'm wonderful. I don't need AI to tell me that. My partner would be like, yeah, we got enough wonderful, your head's big enough. But on a serious note, saying, I want you to look for ways that I could get better. I want you to look for things that I can improve on. Don't just make me feel like I'm amazing. I want a little bit of both. And then the last thing is if I give it a prompt, I want it to think for a second. about what I'm asking it and stop and ask questions where they're relevant. I think that can save a lot of time. It can improve the value a lot, and the value of the responses a lot. And then I think it could probably save some compute as well. Like, I don't want it to, write a full draft of example problems if I forgot to specify something important. I do use AI. I try not to use AI more than I have to. And I think this can help me use it more effectively and efficiently. So I do, in my little customized instructions, I say, think real quick before doing any prompt and ask clarifying questions if you think of any good ones. And then something else that you can do that I won't talk too much about, you can use like projects. Everything in your chats is like useful for, like, it can refer to the things in its chats, but you can also upload documents to projects, and that can be used into multiple chats. Look more into using projects if you're interested in that, but I won't talk about them here. And then I've said this before, I'm going to say it again because we all need to hear it, not just for math professors, everyone in any job ever. You are responsible for whatever you use AI to do. If you use AI to generate an email, you are responsible for the words in that email. If you use AI to generate a quiz, you are responsible for everything that's in that quiz. If you use AI to, I don't know, write your annual self-evaluation or something, you are responsible for everything that is written there. You need to verify and look over what AI gives you always. Now, some stakes are higher than others. If you're just, brainstorming some problems and the example doesn't work out as nice as you wanted to, that's fine. That's a learning opportunity. But, if you're using AI to respond to a student or something, and you copy and paste the message from ChatGPT and it includes the ad, the student, because you're using the free version, there's going to be some problems. And there probably should be some problems if that's what you're doing. But you are responsible for AI's output. Look it over. It makes lots of mistakes. It's a very powerful tool, but it also makes lots of mistakes. So that's the main things I wanted to talk about in this episode. Remember, this is really a two-part episode. The first part is this one about like how we can be using AI, and that is going to bridge us to this second episode, which will be the next episode on how students should be using it, how we can teach students to use it more effectively. And again, the reason why we need to use AI is so we can help students use it better. Regardless of what we think about AI, our students are going to be using it. We need to help them use it the best way. And in order to do that, we kind of have to use it ourselves. And so if we're going to be using it ourselves, let's use it as professors to get experience with it, and also make sure to be testing it out from a student perspective as well. So thank you everyone for watching. Please rate the podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to it. Share it with someone who might be interested in this, and give me your feedback. I love hearing your thoughts. I'm Jason Barnett at South Puget Sound Community College. And until next time, have a good rest of your day or night or whatever time of the day it is for you. Bye-bye.